Will you promise to be good if you come up here? All right. Okay. Ouch. Hi everybody. We can't be doing this, Devo. You need to go lay over there. Hey, go lay over there. Go on. Don't step on my dick and balls. Devo, no, go. Get off me. Get off me. Go. What's up, everybody? My name's AJ. Welcome to another episode of Question and Aggression. This is an idea I've actually had for a while. This is something that I've thought about a lot over the years as well. As some of you might know from previous episodes, I come from a pretty small town in East Ohio. I grew up there, like right on the whole Appalachian, whatever the fuck you want to call it. I call it Appahoochee, like border, right across the river from West Virginia and stuff like that. And one thing that region is not known for is hardcore punk. As a matter of fact, most people from my hometown have not heard of hardcore punk, as I've alluded to again in other videos. With that came its own set of challenges. So I wanted to cover that in this video and also kind of speculate on how things may have been different if I came from a bigger city. So hope you guys enjoy it. On to the video.
Let's go!
Speaking of my region, hometown homies are gonna know about the fucking spot. Yeah, I'm gonna have a couple beers on this one. Who gives a shit? It's my night off. All right, so small town struggles. I'm sure a lot of them are pretty apparent to you guys, and I'm probably gonna include that in this list, but there's also some that like maybe people don't consider or don't realize. If you're not from a hometown, you probably wouldn't even think it would be like this. Did I say if you're not from a hometown? If you're not from a small town, you probably wouldn't think of things being like this. You know, I don't know if I'm gonna like break this down point by point by point. Probably not gonna do all that. I'm probably just gonna make this more of like a ramble thing. In this section of the video, I wanna just cover kind of my own personal experiences, what I absolutely know to be true for me anyway. There's a lot of bands out there from smaller regions and, you know, maybe they had similar experiences. Obviously, I don't speak for everybody, but these are my experiences. One of the early struggles I had in the very beginning was like even connecting with other people around my age or anybody that would be into any kind of music. Because of the small town and like how out of the way it is, like our only access to any kind of entertainment or any kind of like music or anything like that, most of it was through like MTV and like the Comcast box, Music Choice. So we had like really kind of a limited number. I mean, back then the internet was a thing, but it wasn't really what it is today. Like, I think I was in 7th or 8th grade the first time I've even heard the phrase YouTube, you know? Showing my age here, I'm an old ass man. So with that said, you know, when I discovered, you know, hardcore punk when I was around, I'm gonna say like 14 or 15 years old, you know, pretty much nobody I knew had any concept of what that is or any interest to learn about it. Unfortunately, a lot of times, you know, people are kind of what they're into and that's that, you know, people from my experiences aren't really looking for new experiences or new things to try out and get into, you know what I mean? So, and on top of that, there's just like a limited population of people. So like take a city of like 150,000 people, hardcore punk being a niche genre, you know, you might have like 1,000 or a couple thousand people in that whole city that are into it. Maybe even less than that. Let's say it's 500 or 600. When I was growing up in my town, there was a population of about 10 or 11,000 people, and you know, around my age group, there was, as far as I know, 2 people that were into hardcore punk, and that's myself and my older brother, Blake, who got me into it. And the next thing that's kind of a problem is like when we did start, you know, getting together, making music, doing original stuff, releasing stuff. Well, now it's, you know, you got to go to where the scenes are. So being so far out of the way with no scene or anything like that, it's, I mean, at minimum, you're looking at like an hour drive, you know what I mean? Which, you know, an hour isn't terrible, but when you're young and kind of new to driving and getting out in the world, it seems a lot longer than it is. And on top of that, like just to go to like any place that'll have us, not necessarily where there's a scene. I mean, the closest scene there was, yeah, like you're looking at like hour and a half, 2 hours tops, you know, to even just get to a show, to go hang out, go meet people and play. And especially in the beginning, as I'm sure, you know, a lot of you watching might know, in the beginning, you're kind of playing for free. And if it's not for free, it's for like scraps. You know, you're not really bringing anybody. It's more of an opportunity for stage time in those days. At least it was for me. I don't know. I've seen some bands out there though, that it's like their third show ever and they're fucking incredible. So who knows what it's like. But for me, we weren't great starting out and we did a lot of free shows back then. And unfortunately, because in my hometown, nobody really knew what we were doing, what we were trying to do. There wasn't really any support. You know, we had our small pocket of friends who, if they could get the time off work and felt like tagging along with us, they'd come to a show, but wasn't really their thing. But outside of that, there wasn't like kind of built-in support. I'd imagine if you started out in a bigger city and you're half decent, you know, you're gonna have like people there that are interested in the city scene and supporting new and upcoming bands and wanting them to get further and stuff like that. Like, I didn't have any of that. As a matter of fact, like, there's kind of a crabs in a bucket mentality, unfortunately, where I'm from. It's like, you know, achieving your dreams or chasing your dreams or anything like that, like, oh, that's for those people out there, that's not for us. Like, we stay quiet and out of the way and we live a humble life. And there's nothing wrong with living that type of a life, but there were quite a few people who were very discouraging and kind of against you even doing your own thing. You know, they want you to follow mine. I think it just makes people that don't know much about anything very uncomfortable and maybe insecure because they never did anything with their lives. And like on top of that, when you do start to do things, when you do start to get out there like I have, people always just question like, well, you know, people, little fucker, bah! People always tend to question the legitimacy of what it is that you're doing or even saying. Like, they might even think you're full of shit or whatever. And, you know, I'm not gonna sit here and show people slideshows of our shows and try to convince them, like, whatever, dude, if you're not into it, fuck off, I don't care. And since it's something that isn't like a mainstream thing that they already know about, like, they kind of don't, they don't even know what to think, I believe, is kind of where they're coming from. They don't even know how to feel about this whole thing. But unfortunately, a lot of people, when they don't know things, it tends to be like a negative thing. Like, since it's foreign to them, it must be no good. Because they know everything that's awesome in their life, you know, in their little circle. And on top of all that, that kind of like makes things like, it's really difficult to break through anyway, you know? So not only can you like not really offer anything in return, I know that was a big problem for us back in the day. Like, people would want to show trade and it's like, we literally can't. There's nowhere to put us on, like, anywhere where we play. I'd love to, but which is why I moved to Youngstown. There's a good scene here. Like, it's a smaller city, but it's huge compared to where I'm from, and there is an active scene here. So it's been awesome to be able to like return the favor after all these years, bring people through and, you know, show trade and stuff like that. With all that said though, you wind up finding yourself having to like break into other scenes. And, you know, I think it's probably true in every city, you know, not for every single subgenre in every city, but every city, you know, there's like the cool kids club, the really cliquey mentality. If you're not cool with them, you'll never be cool with them. You didn't grow up with them, you're not in their circle of friends, so therefore you're not cool. And it's really difficult to book shows in those other cities because it's like, we're just some unknowns. So we really, anytime we would get the chance to play with anybody and maybe we're on the same bill as those cool kids, like, we had to fucking really shell out. Like, we had to give 110%. That's why, I don't know how many of you watching are really familiar with our music, but especially our more recent stuff, you'll notice that like we kind of took things to a whole nother level. Like, we're not just a hardcore punk band anymore. Like, we really do our own thing, you know? And we have advanced musicianship going on a lot of our songs. That just comes from years of trying to, like, you have to fucking stand out. You're just somebody from somewhere that nobody knows. So you have to stand out. You have to almost, I don't want to say like, you honestly kind of have to fucking be the main attraction of the show, no matter where you're at in the bill. At least that's a mentality we always took. And don't get me wrong, like, every city we played, especially in the beginning, like, as many dickheads as there was just as many great people. But because those dickheads were there, it actually turned kind of into a positive thing. Like, it only made us stronger. Like, they had to drive 15 minutes to be here. We had to drive 2 hours to be here. They kind of grew up in the scene and know everybody. We had to introduce ourselves to everybody. They could just kind of play whatever and get automatic applause. We had to be fucking good. It was kind of like running with weights on. At least that's kind of how it felt. That's some of the things that were going through my head back in those days, coming from a small town, always trying to make it into bigger cities, bigger scenes. Always felt like we had to prove ourselves. Some people might say, like, I went through with the chip on my shoulder. You're damn fucking right. I went through with the chip on my shoulder. I'm not saying that's necessarily a good thing, but That's absolutely the truth. I did have a chip on my shoulder. I still kind of do in a lot of ways, honestly. But I use that energy and channel it into something positive. I don't have like that defeatist attitude of like, oh man, we're not one of them. Like, we'll never be one of them. Like, no, man, we're gonna go prove them the fuck wrong. And everybody who's been riding with us from the beginning will be proud of us. Like, we're gonna make this shit happen. So, and that's always served me really well. Like, everybody's different, but that's an honest, like, I'd be lying to you if I said I was Mr. Positive and everything was great all the time and I'm this perfect guy who's always happy. Like, no, dude, like, I've got plenty of fucking flaws. I try to work on them. I have been working on them. I'm getting better. And it's funny too, because maybe this will be a topic for another video, but like, music in a way has kind of made me focus on becoming a better person. But that's a whole other speech for a whole other video. So this next part of the video is something that I would really like to open a dialogue on for anybody out there who is from a bigger city. Whether you're in a band or even a fan of music and like you're involved and you see how things work, please comment below on anything I might be right on or anything I might be wrong on or anything I might have left out. Like, please comment below. I really want to open a dialogue on this. After all, I would really like the series to be more of like an open dialogue between myself and other people. Give me a break. All right, so without further ado, here's my speculation on what things might have been like if I was from a bigger city.
You know, sometimes in life I tend to wander.
So something that I kind of touched on earlier is, I think coming from a bigger city, you kind of have a built-in fan base. Like, obviously, you know, you got to be good. You can't just fucking suck. Like, that's not going to automatically win you fans. But if you are like half decent and you get up there, and people in the crowd hear that you're from their hometown, I feel like that kind of gives them, I don't want to say permission, what's a good word for it? It gives them a reason to kind of get behind you and put some wind in your sails, because any kind of a strong, at least the hardcore and punk community, like there's a lot of positives to it. There's a lot of dickheads, but there's a lot of positives to it. And it seems like people, he is like the best side character ever. Really, dude? You just hopped up to hop down. Alright, he's joining me. Sorry, everybody. Devo's here. Oh, this is so unprofessional. At least say hi to the people this time, Devo. Tell them you can talk. Come on. Go ahead and lay down. Not on my papers, please. Thank you, buddy. No, you're okay. You're okay, buddy. Who cares? Alright, Jesus Christ, where was I? So coming from a bigger city, it kind of gives them like a reason to get behind you, put some wind in your sails. They want to see you succeed. They want to see you go far and say, hey, I knew them win and they're from my city. Give them something to be proud of. You know what I mean? So like built-in fan base is like a hard way to put it, but I think you know what I mean with that explanation. One of the big things that I think is probably less speculative and more of a fact is like you have access, whether they're from your town, please stop licking me, dude. Please. Whether they're from the big city that you're from or they're coming through like a music club or something like that, you have access to these bigger bands to open for them, to get to know them, whatever. Because again, you know, East Liverpool, Ohio, you don't got big bands coming through there ever. You know, whereas if you live in, let's say you live in like Columbus or something. I lived there for like a year. Of course it was 2020, so like it did not help musically at all. But like, let's say I was from Columbus, okay? I live in the same city as Ace of Cups, and you get some fucking rad bands coming through there all the time. Like, I know when I moved down there, like right before COVID broke out, one of my all-time favorite bands, Rotting Out, came through. Now, at that time, if I had been from there and my band had been from there, I'm sure we would have been known enough in that city to get an opening slot with them, which would be amazing. You know, it puts us in front of a huge crowd. I get to share the stage with a band I really like, on and on and on. And it wouldn't just be Rotting Out, it would be really any bigger hardcore band comes through. As long as we're good enough and our name's known enough, we're kind of like top of the line to be the local support, you know what I mean? You know, you're not gonna get that coming from East Liverpool. Like, we tried to do ticket sales and open up for bigger bands in like Pittsburgh and shit, and it just never worked out. We could barely move any tickets because nobody wants to drive all the way out to Pittsburgh. Like, we weren't able to do that though, coming from East Liverpool, because Cleveland, Pittsburgh, they're all too far away. Again, we don't know anybody in the scenes up there. There isn't a scene where I'm from. We have supportive friends. We could sell a couple tickets or whatever, but like, Outside of all that, we weren't on the radar of any of the promoters or anything in those bigger cities where those bands are coming through. So that I think would be a huge positive, being born and raised in a bigger city. Again, it's not an automatic thing. You still have to be talented, you still have to work really hard, but that is a factor. But it doesn't just start and end with bigger bands. Ever since I moved to Youngstown, I've been getting DMs to my band page 3 or 4 times a week at least of other bands from all other parts of the country. I actually just had a band from China reach out to me, trying to set something up with us when they come through Youngstown, because we're one of the more active bands from here. We tour. We got a name around here. And I'm not gonna lie, it's gotten to the point where it's kind of overwhelming. Like, I'd love to host every band that reaches out through here. I'd love to be able to just do every bill, but A, I'm gonna make people fucking sick of us if we play like 3-4 times a week, and B, we can't host every single band through here. But the fact that that's even an option, the fact that we can kind of, I don't want to say pick of the litter, because there's plenty of times where there's bands coming through that we really direly want to play with, but we can't make the date work for whatever reason. But the fact that we do have the opportunities that we have living in a town like Youngstown is amazing. So imagine if we were from Boston, imagine if we were from New York, and we had the same kind of reputation in those cities that we have around here. There'd be so many more opportunities to play with other great bands from all over the country. And you know what that helps out with, right? Touring. That would make tours practically fucking book themselves, I bet. So I've been playing out for over 10 years. If I was, even just from Youngstown this whole time, the amount of bands and connections that I would have just for hosting that many bands through, a tour would absolutely book itself at this point. And not to mention, like, growing up here before I was even in a band, there's all these venues nearby. Oh man, it would have been awesome when I was a high school to just be able to, like, on a Friday or Saturday night, go out to a show. There's a lot of all ages spots around here, and just being at shows would have been everything to me back then. Back when I was like 15, I just remember coming back from a Casualty show 2+ hours away from Cleveland, and just thinking, like, man, could you imagine what it would be like if I lived up there, to have the Casualties come through where I live. Hell, I'd be at local shows all the time. I'd be able to mosh constantly and just, like, do what I wanted to do. It would have been amazing. So, but again, and I cannot stress this point enough, even if you're from a big city, I'm not saying it's easy. It's still really hard. As a matter of fact, it might even be harder in a way, because is it better to be like the lighthouse in the middle of the ocean, meaning there's really good band in a small town where nobody knows anything, but they know this band's from here, so you stick out like that? Or to be like a 4-leaf clover in a clover field. Like, you're the 4-leaf clover, you're a really good band, but there's 1,000 bands around you, and you kind of get lost in the mix. I don't know what would be better. One thing is true though, whether you're from a small town, whether you're from a big city, I truly believe if you work your ass off, you improve yourself, your musicianship, your relationships with people in the music scene, people outside of the music scene, and you want it bad enough, I really think you can take it wherever you want to go. You know, I don't want to get too corny or anything like that, but having the background that I did growing up as a kid, coming from the middle of nowhere like I did, and to make it where I'm at now. Obviously, I'm not like big, rich, and famous from music, but you know, there's a good bit of people in pockets of the hardcore scenes all over this country that know who we are and are fans of us. And I just never thought I would even be able to make it here. So I'm kind of living proof that if you work your ass off and you want it bad enough, and you don't go around fucking people over, you can make shit happen. I just want to leave this off with saying that if you are one of these younger musicians like I was, and it just seems like so far away and so out of reach, and like everyone around you is telling you what a stupid fucking dream it is and what a waste of time it is, and how you're never gonna make it, and how nobody listens to hardcore anyway, and how all the bands you like suck, and how you have no talent, or whatever the fuck they're telling you. I mean this. I believe in you. Work hard. Be good. I'll see you around. Later.